Hi, this is Ben from Black Talon Design. Today I completely forget how to draw a triangle, I massively overestimate the stickiness of sticky tape, and eventually build an epoxy table. So I found this table by the side of the road. Someone had just put it outside the driveway to get rid of. And I thought, yeah, I could do something with that, even if it's only a practice piece. It's clearly been painted and stained and removed, and then just a big old coffee stain in the middle. I'd recently watched a video of a guy making a jig for his router that cut beautiful table inlays, so I thought I'd have a go. However, the video I watched was only a short and it had no information of how to actually make the thing, so I thought I'd just stumble my way through as usual. Immediately, I fell at the first hurdle as I realised I don't remember anything from school and I don't know how to draw an equilateral triangle. When I started sanding the table down, I was actually really pleasantly surprised. It was quite a beautiful piece of wood with some lovely grain, and as far as I could tell, wasn't the result of a glue up, but made from one single slab of wood. Here's how this works. You've got your jig that your router is going to sit on top of. I've mocked a template up in cardboard here. You've also built a frame around your table. I've just used offcuts of 2x4 because I've got loads lying around. And you're going to sit your router in its jig and you're simply going to guide along the fence, and when you get to here you're going to rotate from that side to that side. That should be 60 degrees if it's an equilateral triangle, and then we repeat for all 4 corners, and you'll end up with this nice pattern here. Seems simple, right? So I wanted to use the smallest triangle possible so that my inlay is going to be towards the edge of the table and not somewhere here in the middle as it would be if I used a larger equilateral triangle. The issue is the equilateral triangle had to encompass my router base, which I measured at 15 centimeters. Otherwise, what we're going to get as we put the router on the jig, we're going to roll it up here, and all we're going to get is those 90-degree corners, not that nice curve that we wanted in the inlay. So this left me with a problem. I've got to find the smallest equilateral triangle possible that will completely encompass a circle of 15 centimeter diameter. And I am not intelligent enough to do that maths. So I decided to summon
an army of nerds.
And by that I mean went on Quora and posted this question. And the answers blew my mind. It was so complicated. I just wanted to draw a triangle I did not understand. So as I got more and more confused, eventually, thankfully, some helpful person posted this, which, long story short, states that 26 centimeters is my smallest triangle. Then eventually I came up with a solution that's probably obvious to everyone watching who's more intelligent than me. As long as the equilateral triangle router base is thicker than the fence, the router will sit on top and it will glide over the fence, eliminating the problem. So I got to work cutting my fence using a 1/2 inch ply. You will notice some residual tape on my fingers there. That is from one of the worst accidents I have ever had woodworking. Want to find out more? I do have a video on it, check it out. Then the idea was to stick the frame down using double-sided sticky tape, which, as it turns out, I absolutely suck at using, and I am rubbish in getting the back side of the tape off. Once the frame was down, it was time to get out the router and cut my inlay. And this happened. Yeah, pretty stupid. So then, again, after asking someone more intelligent, I worked out how to draw an equilateral triangle using a compass. Then you are to find the center of each line and connect from the corner to the adjacent line. Those lines will all pass through the central spot, which is the exact middle of your equilateral triangle. Simply cut the shape out, drill the center hole for your router bit, and you have your router jig. So here we go, ready to carve our first inlay. First corner, all going well. And that's where we have a problem. As you can see, one side of the fence came unstuck, meaning the router slipped and gouged a massive groove to the side. Fortunately, this was on a scrap piece of ply and I had done a tester. I must point out that it's absolutely key that your triangle is a perfect equilateral, otherwise you will not get even corners, and when you come through the last line they will not join up. So onto the actual table now. Practice is done. You can see here that I am doubling up on the sticky tape. Taking no chances, not going to overestimate the stickiness of double-sided tape again and ruin my actual piece. But that did mean that this took even longer to get this frame stuck down. I'd cut the wood on the table saw, so I knew that the widths were all the same, so I just lined up the fence with the outside of the table and used my set square to check it was perfectly flush. If you've made it this far into the video, guys, I would really appreciate a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep making content like this. Now I needed to make sure this was stuck down, so I came up with a unique and patented technique. There it is. That isn't going anywhere. All in all, that went pretty well. There was a small bit here where the router had slipped slightly, and I knew I was going to have to do a fix on it. First time round, I went quite shallow. Second time, a little bit of a deeper pass to get to my final depth. Pretty happy with the results. So we came to this bit where I said the router did slip, so I had to cut a little inlay in there, tried to find some wood to match the grain orientation as best I could, glued it up, came back with the flush cut saw and trimmed it off. Now the edges need to be really good, but the actual bottom of the channel isn't so important because I'm going to be filling this with epoxy. Pretty pleased with the result of the inlay there. We won't be able to tell exactly how it's going to look until we get that finish on. So time to remove the frame, which wasn't easy because I'd make sure that thing was stuck down real good. Really important I get all that dust out before the epoxy pour. I'm using a deep pour epoxy here. even though I'm only really pouring to a depth of about 1.5 centimeters to 2 centimeters, still went with the deep pour epoxy. Decided to mix it with some lovely black mica powder to get a very dark, pearlescent black effect. Heated up the epoxy with a blowtorch to get rid of all those bubbles, and you can see I had a lot of overspill. Time to clean this table up. Starting with sanding the excess off with a 40 grit. This is probably the most painstaking and time-consuming part of this entire table restoration, and it eats through sandpaper. The epoxy is just going to gum up that sandpaper real quick and make it not very effective. But as you can see, after about 8 sheets of this 40 grit, it was starting to come together. So let's check back on my little inlay. Not bad. We do have a small line, and that's because it was really hard because of the awkward shape to actually get a tight clamp on. So I sanded the table up to 120 grit, then did a water pop, continued sanding to 180, another water pop, and then sanded it up to 320, a final water pop and a final sand. Those of you that don't know, water pop, simply spraying the table with water. What this does is it raises the grain. So then when you sand it again, it gets rid of that raised grain. Without the water pop, you will sand it to your finished sanding grit. Then you will apply your finish, and that's when the grain will raise, so you won't get a smooth table. Doing a water pop between final sanding grits eliminates this problem. For the finishing touch to this table, I'd ordered a custom branding iron of the Black Talon Designs logo, and I was going to use a branding iron for the first ever time. And boy was I nervous to apply it to this table that I had spent hours on at this point. So I did some tests. Turns out I'm rubbish at using a branding iron. So I practiced and read up on it, and eventually started to get a bit better. So what did my mistakes teach me? 1, make sure the wood is flat. One of my test pieces was warped and unplaned, so obviously I didn't get an even burn. 2, every wood species is going to burn differently. Always have a test piece. 3, try wetting the wood surface slightly for a cleaner burn. 4, you may need to wiggle or roll the brand from side to side to get each section to burn well. And make sure the brand is really, really hot. I ended up having to use 2 blowtorches to get the brand heated evenly, because I'm using a 6 centimeter diameter or 2.4 inch brand here. Obviously, the smaller the brand head, the easier it's going to be to heat up and to get an even burn. So I was so nervous about applying the brand to the finished table that I actually forgot to roll the camera. Apologies. But as you can see, it went pretty well. So I've put the brand on here and I've sanded it again at that 320. And I don't have an air compressor, so I'm actually picking the bits of dust out individually with a needle here before applying the finish. Once that was done, I came at the table here with a 1/4 inch round over bit with my router and went round all the edges and on both sides of the table. I then came back and sanded up the edges of the table, and this table was ready for finish. I'm using an Osmo hard wax oil here. This stuff's originally designed for hardwood floors, so it's really good on the protection and it leaves a pretty good sheen. I'm not going to say it's a gloss, but it's not matte either. It's kind of a mid-level of sheen. Now what you want to do is saturate the piece of work, get it all covered use the Osmo generously and then leave it. Leave it and let it sit. Now, how long do you leave it? I'm not sure what's recommended, but I found about 15 minutes is the best. If I leave it longer than that, then I find it hard to wipe the Osmo off, because the next stage, what you want to do is get it all off. In that time, enough would have soaked in to protect the table, so you want to wipe the remainder off and get all of it. Look for shiny spots and wipe the best you can. Get all that remaining Osmo off. And here we have the finished product. I'm really happy with the way it turned out, and I learned a lot doing it. I hope you did too. As you can see, I've got the original legs on there, which are a bit shabby looking. I will be putting some new legs on, or potentially upcycling the existing legs. What do you think I should do? Let me know. Should I get some black steel legs fabricated, or try and salvage these legs into something? Thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed.